You ever go to LinkedIn or go to a conference and see somebody else who's just nailing it with their content marketing? And I'm always curious, how are they doing it? What does it look like behind the scenes? So in this podcast, that's what we're gonna explore. I'm gonna ask dumb questions of smart people to figure out how content marketing is working these days and how you and I can take away actionable steps for our businesses. Welcome to the podcast.
Ben Wise, I am the founder of Storied.
It's easy to write off social media and be like, okay, yeah, it doesn't work.
Adapt it to who you are.
Hey, Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey, Justin, how are you?
Good. Thanks for being here. Can you tell us a little bit about you as a content marketer? What do you do and your approach to things?
Basically, I've been doing SEO and content marketing for over 15 years at this point, maybe even a little longer. I'm kind of losing track as I'm getting old. But yeah, so I started out as a copywriter. I have an English literature degree and graduated college and was like, what am I going to do with this? I ended up doing some copywriting and stumbled into, at the time, it was called the Keyword Academy, but now you'd just call it like SEO. They were using SEO to create blogs and whatnot. So I started to do that, kind of learned search and learned how keywords work and how websites work and how to get ranked and get traffic from Google. That ended up making me pretty qualified to be a consultant. So I got into the ad agency world. I was thrown onto a bunch of accounts. Over time, I worked with small local customers like car dealerships and things like that, all the way up to Procter and Gamble and Tiffany and Companies, Ben and Jerry's and Nike and Facebook, and just I've been all over the kind of enterprise brand world, and then I got kind of tired of that, about 8-9 years ago, and I went in-house at a startup called Homelight. They're a real estate tech company. I started with them to lead their SEO and content marketing program, built it from scratch, and over a period of 6 years, turned it into one of their most valuable assets and like one of their most enduring marketing channels. I did it again for a friend of mine. He has a fitness tech startup. So I joined his startup, worked with him for about a year to like triple his, organic search traffic. And then about a year ago, I started Narrative Bend, launched my own content marketing firm. And now I've actually joined forces with a couple of the people from my Homelight days, the kind of core team that I loved working with back then. We've joined together and now we are doing content marketing, specializing in real estate and finance and other kind of high stakes industries.
Yeah. And that's the reason I wanted to talk with you today, Matt, because, in the world of faster and cheaper and easier, especially there's a lot of solo marketers out there like that, content marketers. And I want to find the easiest. You're going the opposite direction with your agency. I thought that was fascinating when you and I had a call a week or two or whatever it was ago. And so I want to hear about your perspective on why you're going in the direction of like more regulated industries and more tougher, content deliverables that require so many more hoops to jump through. Why are you going in that direction and what's been the result so far?
It's maybe a complicated answer, but in the simplest way is like, one, the people in those industries really value the work that we do as content marketers. So like it's hard to create really compelling, interesting, useful content in an industry like real estate or in an industry like finance, where you're talking about the tax implications of selling a home, or you're talking about the like RESPA violations. There's just like all these different more boring things to talk about, and making them interesting is a skill and it's usually valued. And then, as a business owner myself, I wanted to make sure that we as a company were going to work with clients that didn't feel so pressured by their budget, right? I wanted to make sure that content marketing, it's a long-term sport. It's like I call it an endurance sport, where you have to do it and kind of do it consistently for a long period of time. And if the clients you're working with have lower value per customer, right? They're not, if they're like an e-commerce site where they're selling widgets for $20 a widget, they have to move a lot of widgets to be able to pay for a content marketing effort. But if you're working with a, wealth management firm where every customer they get is potentially worth hundreds of thousands of dollars to them, then they're much more willing to kind of like invest in these long-term revenue driving channels. And so that was another kind of just like thing there. I wanted to make sure that the clients we were working with could afford working with us and would feel good about that kind of like making that kind of investment in their business. And then the more recent thing that also drove this decision was the rise of generative AI. So like I started Narrative Bent right as ChatGPT kind of came out, and generative AI took everybody by storm, and was changing the conversation all over the place around what is, marketing now, what is writing now, is there even a point to making art of any like that whole conversation was happening. And so my thinking there was like, well, one, let's make use of those tools where it makes sense, and really explore them. So I dived headfirst into using them. A couple of our early clients, we were actually doing AI consulting work for them, kind of helping them implement AI in their content marketing teams. But the big question I had, and why I ended up doing like more complex topics and kind of high stakes industries, is I was like, what can we do that AI doesn't do well? And AI does not do trust very well. Like you can't, it lies to you all the time. It makes stuff up. You have to do a lot of kind of work to make sure that what it's saying is actually trustworthy and credible. And so human beings can do that a lot better. And especially, with our particular subject matter expertise, having deep like real estate industry background and deep finance background, like it really helped with that.
Yeah, a lot of people on the outside would say, "Oh, you've picked a good niche," but it's not the easiest to get into. You almost have to be. I mean, would you agree that you almost have to be like subject matter knowledgeable? I wouldn't say experts, but subject matter knowledgeable to make an entryway and be successful in this field.
If you were starting an agency in the same kind of area, yes. I mean, I would not. I think about this a lot actually, because I see so many people on like LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever who are like 20-year-old, 22-year-old entrepreneurs. And they're like, hey, I started this like agency and turned it into, $100,000 a month or whatever. And I'm just like, there's no way I could have done that without the last like 15 years of experience under me. Making a sales pitch to convince somebody to hire your firm is hard enough. And then if I was thinking about doing this when I was 22, it's like, now I don't have any brands who said they worked with me. I don't have any like network to recommend referrals to me. I don't have any case studies, right? Like now I do. I have a big sheet of tons of brands I've worked with over the years. I've got fantastic I have multiple case studies of stuff I've done on the consulting world and stuff I've done in-house. And then my team as well, that I've had the luxury of like building around me, has like really deep roots in real estate. One of them, his wife is a real estate agent, and he has been her director of marketing for a long time. Another one, before I met her when I was working at Homelight, like she was writing for Inman News, which was like a leading real estate trade magazine. And so like we have really deep roots in this field as well. So that helps, right? It's just, I don't think it's necessary. Like we're certainly getting clients outside of real estate and finance, right? We have others as well. I don't think it's 100% necessary, but it certainly helps to get a conversation going.
Yeah, people like knowing that you have that subject matter knowledge. Makes it comes off as I have to do less work if I don't have to teach you about some of the basics of my industry.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and especially, that's kind of what we're leaning into with our service, right? Is like AI doesn't know as much as like the somebody who's boots on the ground, like doing it day in and day out. And they, and so we can, yeah, and we are better positioned against like another agency who might say, yeah, we do blogging work, yeah, we do social media work. Well, but do you know the difference, between a realtor and a real estate agent? Like a lot of people don't, right? It's like that kind of thing helps a lot.
Yeah, makes sense. Now let's let's talk about like the kind of content you do, because content marketing is such a big world. I interview people on this podcast from the whole spectrum of content marketing in different niches, what they do, the kinds of clients they help. So you're in I like the word you use, high stakes industries, real estate, law. What kind of content are you putting out for them?
Our approach, there's a lot of search it's like search informed. But we're trying to be much more holistic, like much more omni-channel. Like we do content for search, content for social media, product marketing content, flyers, white papers, signs, that kind of thing, and email content. And then we're starting to do a lot more like paid social ads. And so kind of a mix, big mix.
Yeah, mix of content and paid. It's always a good mix to have. I think there's a lot of people in content world who say no to paid ads, but no, it's a great tool to have in your tool belt if you can do it well.
I mean, these days you gotta always promote. You can't just. I like to say you can't expect to build it and expect people will come. You have to find a distribution channel of one kind or another.
Yep.
And
getting
unfortunately, you have to get it in front of people. And unfortunately, the organic ones like SEO or organic social media, if you're starting that from scratch, that's going to take a long time before you're really, getting in front of people. Right. And so we have found that you can kind of shorten the time horizon to seeing return on your investment in content marketing if you find alternative distribution channels, right? So if you invest a little bit in paid social, for example, you can get a lot more traction much faster with even your organic social media content, right? Or if you're a local real estate agent, for example, investing in paid search can help boost and support you while you're waiting for your SEO to kind of come up behind and pay for the effort. So
now tell me about when you there's a lot of power, I know from experience, when you combine paid ads and really, really good content programs, really good content out there, SEO, SEO stuff, or even white papers, things like that. Do you guys, what's that relationship for you guys? Give me an example of something you've seen recently work. Maybe it's too early to tell, but if you've seen anything work for a client, tell me about like, what did that funnel look like and what made it work?
Yeah. So one of the types of campaigns we've been seeing a lot of success with now is a lot of, it's basically at the core of it, you're identifying a customer's like pain point, right? So we'll talk to customers, we'll figure out what do they care about. Then we will use search data to validate those concerns, right? So if you said, hey, I have this problem, then I would also go to the keyword data and I'd look at, is it just Justin that has that problem? Or is it like a ton of people out in the market? And does that mean there's traffic potential here? That serves as the core of the strategy, right? It's identifying like validated problems and pain points and like things that people are stressed about. You create an article about it, like a blog post, for example, or a guide, something on your website. Then you create a bunch of organic social media posts. We tend to focus on LinkedIn because of the type of audiences we're targeting. There's a lot of B2B action there. A lot of, high stakes finance brands want to be on LinkedIn. So you do a lot of posts on organic LinkedIn, not necessarily trying to drive traffic right to your blog post, but to try to like talk about the same issue, right? Your blog post is like a big research paper that you've done a ton of work into. You can use that research by kind of cutting it up and creating native content that works on social media. And then you create paid ads in the same vein. And sometimes you're promoting your organic content. Other times you're just creating a straight up like ad with copy that exacerbates or tries to aggravate that pain point. You drive interest into the blog post with your paid ads. And all of this is to kind of like set up a lead magnet of some kind. So for us, we've been using a lot of webinars. People like to do like much more live events. So you'll have a webinar attached to the blog post. Maybe you'll do one or a couple of blog posts. You do like 3 or 4 that all drive to the same webinar. Your organic LinkedIn content is driving into the blog post. You also do the same kind of organic LinkedIn driving into the webinar directly. And you do paid ads on social driving into the webinar directly. And so that mix, right? You're attacking the top of the funnel and the middle of the funnel with your blog articles and your native organic social. And then you're attacking the very bottom of the funnel when people are ready, to take some kind of action with paid ads, organic social driving into the webinar. And it all kind of like works collaboratively. So yeah, so we did that for a client recently and they had a lot of success. They got like 300 attendees or something like that.
That's a big webinar. Wow. Yeah, I've heard a lot about, I'm curious about your webinar idea there because, I've heard a lot about webinars kind of losing steam now with, post-COVID, people don't want to be in these kinds of calls. How are you making that work for your clients? Are you just finding it's because those clients have clout and people want to be there live? So that's the first part. And then the second part is, as a content agency, what's your role in those webinars?
So the first part, I don't know if clout really has anything to do with it. We're working a lot with startups and stuff on this, so they don't have any brand. I think what attracts people, it doesn't have to be a webinar, but it's just something, the sales team always wants that like juicy email, right? They want to get some kind of contact information for their marketing analytics to like attribute like this was a successful campaign or whatever. And then they want email addresses to kind of chase down after. So that's why having a lot of, I don't know, that's a kind of different conversation. I don't know if it's necessary to do all of that, but, clients like to have that so that you can more easily prove ROI.
The email addresses.
Yeah, having some kind of like sign up, right? So a webinar works that way versus like just having a YouTube video, for example, because you can get the sign up. Now, I think there is something to be said about the webinar being live and having a person there to like have a call and response, like having a question and answer, like having that kind of like live feedback is unique to a webinar. I think you could probably do it as like a Twitch stream or a YouTube stream as well, but a webinar is kind of what business people do. So that's their thing. And then, I don't know. I mean, I think what's probably happened is that people think webinars are less effective because they're not offering good information in those webinars, right? A webinar should not be a timeshare presentation. And if somebody sniffs that out from you, then they're not going to attend it, right? And so I think a key component of that whole marketing mix that I just talked about, that kind of a campaign, it's not sales driven. It's content first. It's trying to educate and solve somebody's pain and solve their problem in all that content. So the article is not aggressively banging you over the head with like case studies about those products and like buy now call to actions. The webinar as well is not focused on just the client's like product. It's not a demo. It's actually, here's how people are solving this specific pain. Let's talk about that. Let's help each other out here. That's the kind of webinar. And then at the end of the webinar, if we spend like 2 minutes just saying like, hey, brought to you by this, that, and the other, if you want to schedule a demo or talk to us further, like here's how to do that. That's valuable, right? That's valuable free education and free information. And if it's good and people can tell that it's good from the blog post they read or the organic social they're seeing or the ads you're running, then they'll attend. Yeah, so that's the first part. And then the second part is like how we are involved in that. So depends on who we're working with. But for the examples I'm thinking about, we are involved from the ground up. So we're coming up with the concept. We're putting together the scripts. We're putting together the decks. Generally, the client is giving the presentation. So my team doesn't like sit on the webinar and present. We could at some point, I guess. But right now we're kind of like prepping the client to then host the webinar because they know their business much better than we do. And so that's kind of how that all works.
What webinar tool do you use?
It depends. It depends on the client. Yeah.
Oh, you use whatever they're using.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. We don't. Yeah. We're not really. I think most of them are using just Zoom.
Yeah.
Basic
Everybody's
stuff.
got Zoom. Yeah. Makes sense. Yep. Very, very cool. Matt, I'm a video guy, so I got to ask this question. Like, is video part of your content strategy right now?
For our clients, no, but that's mainly a problem of our own. We don't have the resources yet to offer that. But my long-term plan for narrative, we're a year old. We're starting with what we do extremely well. But over time, I'm hoping to like launch a video studio, build out a product offering exclusively around video, help support all of the other kind of content we're doing. Just because this is where things are headed and this is how people are consuming media these days. But for ourselves, yeah, video is not a huge part yet. It's going to be a huge part. So you can't really see, but behind me, I've got a bunch of video equipment. We're going to start doing regular video content for my LinkedIn profile. So posting directly to my LinkedIn. I've been doing that since October, mostly like text-based stuff, text and images. I feel like I need to make the transition to like do more talking head style videos like we're doing right now, right?
Yeah, love that. That's a good way to do it. I'm very curious how the LinkedIn video feed that's coming out, it's in beta testing right now. Maybe by the time of the publishing of this podcast, it'll be live, but it's going to be available on mobile. It's going to be like a TikTok style feed or Instagram Reel style feed. Very curious how that'll boost the views that people get on videos, because on LinkedIn, like video is like the 4th or 5th on the list in terms of reach. Just by default, number one is like selfie posts and carousels and things like that. So it's not the highest level of reach, but it is the highest quality. I argue it's the highest quality of connection. You can build a stronger emotional connection with someone, because I mean, in B2B, and we're all of this is in the context of B2B. Like all my clients, all my content, all of your stuff is in context of B2B. In B2B, you work with people, not companies, and so why not shortcut that process? If you're going to end up talking with a salesperson who's going to have to talk with you through the product demo, like that might be the person you work with or not, but it will be a person or people. So why not start building that process early, that trust process early with video content? So I'm glad you're tuned into that. It's interesting because you said this earlier, like about the reach thing, like you're doing at paid ads. We don't do paid ads. Maybe someday down the road, because it makes sense, right? You get in front of more people faster. That's the nature of ads. It's just faster reach for new people, top of the funnel. People never heard about you. But I find that, at least for now, it could change soon. Short form video kind of does that a little bit. Not on LinkedIn necessarily, because LinkedIn, like I talked about, is only like 4th on the list in terms of reach compared to other kinds of content. But like on TikTok and YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels, like is a very discoverable, very reach friendly kind of content medium. And a lot of people aren't aware of that. And I think a lot of people forget, like, you can get a ton of reach just through a single video. And that's our approach. Like you take one video and you shorten it and you chop it up and you get that, nice little gold nugget, and then you post it on every platform like you're planning to do. But you post it on every platform, you'll get thousands of views in the total, even though you might only get 400 on LinkedIn. You'll get 500 on TikTok, you'll get 100 on Shorts. And it's really interesting how few people haven't thought about that way. That's our our agency's model for posting for our clients.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, TikTok is arguably the best discovery engine that's ever been created. And then YouTube is copying them with YouTube Shorts, and they're getting much better at it. Same with Instagram Reels; they're copying TikTok.
Everyone's copying each other in that field.
I think in
Facebook
general, yeah, like short form video content is becoming the way to get discovered in general. So it has tons of reach. I think where where you run into issues on the business side is attribution, right? So like I have had a hard time making a strong, even when I was in-house and I did a lot of video work trying to build, once you have your written content down and you've turned it into an engine, into a really strong machine that's generating tons of revenue and generating tons of income, you tend to you're able to secure budget for other more experimental channels like podcasting or videos or whatever. And so I had the luxury of doing that. But even when we were doing a lot of videos, so we were doing, YouTube videos, trying to create explainers on, the same sort of topics we were covering with the articles on the blog, they would get views and they would get impressions and they would show, I could demonstrate like, hey, people are watching these things. But what I could never demonstrate, unfortunately, and I think this is going to become more true of all channels soon as Google gets rid of cookies and data privacy becomes more of an issue. But with video right now and historically, especially, it's been so hard to tie the video work you're doing to a lead or to revenue in some way. It's much more of a brand kind of concept marketing channel where you have to, if you're the CEO of the business, you have to kind of just buy into the idea that creating videos that people watch and find value in will yada, yada, yada turn into money for your business.
It's more of a belief.
Yeah. And I mean, I think us marketers, especially us content marketers who are consuming so much meat, we are watching videos constantly. I'm a YouTube power user. I almost exclusively watch YouTube videos. I try not to be on TikTok just because it's so addictive and I tend to get too sucked into it. We see where the puck is going, but the product kind of founders or the MBA type founders who don't really think about the marketing side, that's a big leap. And I would say the last 20 years or so of digital marketing has actually made it so they kind of have become to expect that all of their marketing can be tied directly to revenue in a way that, in the 1960s, you just couldn't do at all, right? Spend on television, you just kind of cross your fingers. Spend on the New York Times, you just kind of cross your fingers and hope that it works. Then the 2000s came, cookies started to become a thing. Paid search became a thing. Banner ads, you could see the click to the conversion event to the dollars in your bank account. And that became the norm and that became expected, right? And so I think a lot of the investment has actually gone into those channels simply because they're easier to tie revenue to or tie return on investment to. Whereas video, I think everyone intuitively knows this is what we need to be doing. But the business case, making that business case to I don't know, I'm going to sound ageist now, but to somebody over the age of 50 who's still got a cable package and still gets their newspaper delivered to their door, they're just, it's a hard case to make.
Yeah, I found that's very true of, I've talked to hundreds of people about video in the last year, just one-on-one, I was doing some market research, for example, working with executive coaches last summer, determining if I wanted to go after that niche. And I found very few of them actually were on social. And so they were completely unaware of the power of TikTok, the power of YouTube Shorts, the power of Instagram Reels. So if you're not seeing it, you're not valuing it for yourself, right? It's those people. And these are all folks that were Gen X, all these executive coaches, Gen X or boomers. a couple millennials, and it was the millennials or younger Gen X who were on these platforms that said, "Oh yeah," and they were either doing something already or they had plans to do something.
Oh yeah, I think if you're looking ahead, if you're like a forward-thinking marketer, you are actively trying to invest in video production now. I think it's gotten easier than ever to do, but the barrier to entry on video is still much higher than like the barrier to entry on like written or even audio. It's getting better. It's getting easier. AI is also forcing this conversation, right? Because deepfake videos are not as good at pretending to be somebody as ChatGPT is, as pretending to be an article writer, right? So it's kind of like also pushing us into video.
Yeah, if we can get away from being attribution thirsty and go back to the good old, I say good old, it's not good old, but like the old model of like belief-based marketing. If you put out good stuff, people will come, right? At the heart of content marketing, that's how it works, regardless of attribution. Video will become more powerful. And yeah, to your point, there is no way that we attribute specific, results to specific videos. It's about trusting the process. It has been for my example. And I think I shared this with you when we were doing our networking call a while back. Like my own story was, well, trust the process. My mantra was that way. I posted consistently video for 3 months. And at the 3-month mark on the dot, within a 45-day window of that 3-month mark, I got 12 leads in. I was getting 1 per month. And the 12 leads all was half from my content and the other half from people in my network who were aware of my content, were making referrals to me. So it does work. And that's just my own example, but yeah, it does work. It's just putting yourself out there.
I will be honest. I think if I had a sales team right now, I would mandate that my head of sales post videos of themselves talking about the thing on their LinkedIn every day or pretty often, because you can demonstrate, you know what you're talking about. You can become a known person. People watching you develop a relationship with you, even though you may never have spoken to them. It's a kind of like weird celebrity in a way. And that's powerful once you do get them on a sales call, right? They're going to be much more predisposed to buy from you or to at least consider what you're telling them to do because you've been in their phone talking to them day in, day out. Every time they open up their social media feed, boom, your face is there saying something interesting to them and they're developing a trust in you, right? And so, yeah, I would say I'm trying to do it myself as the founder of Narrative Bent. Like it's something it's also like a maturity thing. You kind of like, we had to get to where we are now. We were in survival mode for the last year. Video wasn't that important to like just survive. Now we're in a good place. We're comfortable. We're growing and we're feeling good. So now I'm thinking like long term, do more video.
Yeah. Great. Well, Matt, this has been a good conversation. Really enjoyed the conversation about attribution too. Got me thinking about that. Love your mature perspective on content marketing and excited to stay connected with you on LinkedIn. Where can people learn more about you?
Well, follow me on LinkedIn for sure. You can check us out at narrativebent.com. Narrative like the story and bent like, a bent .com. That's our agency's website.
All right. Well, thanks for being here, Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Justin.